Squad, welcome back to InhaleGamesHQ. You can call me COMM, and today we have our next installment in the Who is Legends series, where we deep dive on Ehpex Legend, why they fight, how they fight, and how you could best use them to capitalize on your own gameplay within Ehpex Legends. So in this video, we talk about Revenant, who in Season 18 had a massive rework and was reborn with all these new abilities. I've played him a bunch, discovering and testing some tactics and compiling all the REV facts I could find. If you want to skip ahead to any certain section, everything is timestamped, and of course all links are in the description, so make sure to check those out. And as always, if I missed something, let me know in the comments, but otherwise, enjoy this episode of Who is Revenant. Originally known as Caleb Cross, a human born in 2356, he lived to the age of 44. His homeworld is unknown, and in fact, there's a lot about him we don't know. Caleb's childhood remains shrouded in mystery, other than we know he liked to paint, and arguably still does, just in red. But after an overly critical remark from his father on one of those paintings, essentially the last straw in what we understand as an already not so great relationship, Caleb murdered his father with a palette knife. With all his anger, rage, and pain, and no one to turn to, he eventually takes the only thing he knows, violence, and joins the syndicate as a hired gun. He becomes one of, if not the best assassins on the books, working his way up the ladder, taking out high-value targets, and is eventually tasked with Marcos Andrade, Loba's father. Prior to his mission in the Andrade estate, however, Caleb takes on a job where he's tasked to kill Bob Woods. Essentially, knowing too much, Mr. Woods returns home one day to find his wife murdered. He immediately flees with his children, but Caleb tracks him down once more and murders his children. Caleb was eventually imprisoned for what he had done, but only for as long as it took the syndicate to break him back out, and once they did, Caleb would realize that leaving Bob Woods alive was a crucial mistake. Woods eventually tracked him down and drowns him in untreated sewage. This action, of course, does get Mr. Woods killed by the syndicate, who are avenging Caleb Cross's death, and then unwilling to lose their top assassin, they actually salvage his consciousness, spending years testing and eventually completing a source code that gets put into a forever rebuildable Hammond robotic simulacrum, the first of which boots up in 2420. Revenant was born. Killing for the syndicate in his new form for nearly 300 years, Revenant believes everything is normal, and everything is normal, according to that source code. Becoming better than he ever was before, and accumulating a cult of people who actually believe he was a god in the year 2560. Jump ahead to 2708, and Revenant is tasked with the Marcos Andrade estate, and this is where most of us get familiar with the lore here because of Loba. Like any other contract, Revenant causes a devastating scene and completes the mission he was tasked, killing both Loba's mother and father, leaving her orphaned with nothing but loneliness and rage in her heart. Sound kind of familiar? Little do they know they'll both actually find their way into the games and with similar goals, but I digress. After all this chaos, Rev looks around, pleased at the destruction, but notices a shard of glass in his neck. Going to pull it out, he sees his reflection, and with this damage being just right from the piece of glass, the source code that had been working to make his ability to crawl, climb, and make knives from his hands appear as normal got damaged. This allowing Caleb to see things as they were for the first time in nearly 300 years, and with an overflow of memories, but one clear purpose: payback. To the syndicate, to Hammond Robotics, and to humanity, which he labels all as skin suits. From a young age, Rev has really only known one thing: violence. He's trained, practiced, and later literally programmed to be this way. Originally joining the games as a way for the syndicate to keep Rev's murderous tendencies in check, which was only a good plan if it all went to plan, which of course it didn't. We could say that Revenant has the saddest yet most simple reason to fight, and that is to die. Having his source code being programmed against self-harm and kept just out of reach, Rev was running out of options. He tries to track down everyone who was still alive and knew anything, but there wasn't really anyone left. He took a contract in 2733 that had him capture crypto and some documents he had and then bring them to Boss Willis, who had promised Rev a deactivation code. This instead causes the destruction of a hospital and inevitably gets Boss Willis impaled. Speaking of people being impaled by Rev in his pursuit of justice, he also murdered the Forge, who was planning on being the next legend in the games and was a poster boy for Hammond Robotics at the time, which didn't please Rev. He was also not pleased with learning of Ash being a simulacrum and tries to kill her, but only frees her true personality within the simulacrum instead. Basically, Rev wasn't having too much luck and just starts throwing matches to hopefully go through Hammond simulacrums faster than they can keep being made. With a total of 297 deaths in the year 2734, with over 77% being avoidable. At this point, he had nothing left, and even turned to Loba for help, as technically they both wanted him dead. So in comes Loba. After initially failing her first attempt to destroy REV's source code in the vault under King's Canyon, she enlists the help of other legends to track down artifact pieces from the Shadow Realm. And after eventually finding all the pieces and later revealing she has discovered REV's source code, decides instead of destroying it, she would send it through a phase runner to Gridiron so that Revenant could continue to suffer forever, as that was now worse than death. She left this task to her friend as the fight broke out. Loba won, and all was thought to be lost. Fast forward a bit in the games and Rev starts underperforming, having ability glitches, and is in need of a physical upgrade, maybe some ability upgrades too, which mid-match start to happen to him. A source code update rolls out, and the next time he's uploaded into Simulacrum, it has all new physical features, tweaks, and strength improvements, but also gave Rev a whole new set of abilities. Some time passes, and Valkyrie now approaches Rev with intel about the source code never actually making it to Gridiron, and instead of wondering if he should kill her or bangle her to make Loba suffer forever, partners up with them as well as Crypto and his hacking abilities. They form a truce, locate through an old simulacrum the facility of the new ones, and in one final attempt to secure the source code, they head to a facility in Malta under the control of Eduardo Silva to finally fulfill his purpose. Which again, doesn't go to plan, and Eduardo escapes with the source code, and all is thought to be lost for now.
Oh, Miss Andrade, you must be more careful with your things.
So looking now at his abilities, but we'll quickly note that he is in the class Skirmisher. That's for the care package Insight. His passive, however, prior to being reborn, gave Rev the ability to move fast while crouched and climb further distances on walls. Now, they've dialed that in even more and added the ability that when a legend has low health and is near or damaged by Rev, they'll actually be marked for death. Roughly within a 30-meter range to show this visual marker, and the legend will need to be about 40 health or less to be marked. This is super helpful to get your team the opening kill in a fight, and is probably the only team-based ability left, you could argue, because this does give the intel to your team as well. Also, just a fun fact, lore-wise, Rev eyes are able to detect weaknesses or ailments in targets, even cancer, so it's cool to see him get these upgrades that kind of match his lore and make him selfish, and also, add that layer of, cool. I will also note, though, that because of his wall climbing passive, you can't really wall bounce. Basically, he just kind of wants to start climbing right away. This does lead to some cool opportunities like horizontal wall crawls and wall chaining. Looking now at his tactical, the Shadow Pounce, with a recharge rate of 25 seconds, a distance of 65 meters horizontal and about 25 meters vertical, this Shadow Pounce is a lot of fun. But mixed with other movement tech like super jumps and tap strafes, like legend abilities like an Octane jump pad, you can really start to get things going a bit extra here with the Shadow Pounce, and of course partnered with the passive to jump into a wall and then continue climbing up, getting yourself a nice vantage point to call out the play or get that opening knock like I talked about earlier. Now I'll note he has a quick pounce versus a long pounce, so a quick press or a long press. You can visually see the difference as Rev hands will start to glow when he has the long jump locked in. You'll get the hang of it right away, but using it in battle can be a bit more tricky. You can also cancel the jump before committing to it, which is nice, as you can't always cancel a tactical, and also there is no clear indication of where you'll land, so do make sure to look before you leap, and this will of course help when you're jumping into a fight or mid-fight for like a vertical strafe jump. Now, you can also just tap strafe at the end of a jump to buy yourself some time. For the most part, however, I wouldn't recommend using it to jump into a fight, as it can often lead to you getting picked out of the air, or just taking a bit of damage, or just get yourself too far ahead of your team, lose that fight, get thirsted, it's just kind of over. So marking somebody with your passive and pouncing on that target first might be your optimal choice, because they'll likely be backing off and healing. For the most part though, using the Shadow Pounce to escape, work an angle, and just rotate the map are usually going to take priority over some of these cool in-battle movement techniques. Looking now at his ultimate, the Shroud of Shadows, this has a recharge time of 2 minutes after the shadows end, with 35% being gained from an ultimate accelerant. What this does though is essentially summon a Shroud of Shadows around you, protecting Rev from 75 damage, and when you get a kill it'll actually return 5 seconds of time to the overall ult time. It'll also restore the shadows that have been destroyed, and restore your pounce during the fight, allowing you to have extra health, movement, and intel when using this ult. I will note his hitbox is a bit bigger, so using this to block your teammates that are pushing behind you, or using it to pull a res is also a super viable strategy. After climbing and crawling and pouncing around the map, marking your enemies for death, this is definitely what you want to use when you're pushing in to clean up the fight. Midway through this season of Reborn abilities for Rev, they did actually do an update, tweaking and kind of balancing some of these things as he came out of the gate pretty hot. He used to be able to stick arc stars and stuff to the Shroud as well, using that to charge into fights with. He used to actually get 10 seconds instead of 5 for when you got a kill on his ult. They added piercing damage for when you destroy a shadow, adjusted angle compensation, and also resolved the animation cancel for his Pounce. Starting with our legend interactions, we took Rev and tested him against all the other legends in the firing range here, and here's what we have to note. Starting with his passive, for the most part, getting far enough away and breaking out line of sight is your optimal way to deal with being marked, but for some legends they have an upper hand in dealing with this. Bangalore will negate the mark with her smoke, going behind a catalyst wall, or phasing, tearing, or braceletting away will also make you become unmarked, and is definitely a good way to avoid instantly being pounced on by Rev. Caustic's gas does come close to covering him up, but you can still manage to track him, and unfortunately we tested this against the Mirage, and when he bamboozles, you can still clearly see which one is the marked target. Gibraltar, however, because his dome is the same kind of orange as what highlights you, kind of subtly keeps you safe. Bit of a stretch, but thought I'd add it in. We then move on to his tactical, which had no weird interactions with other legends. Definitely the provider of a lot of the fun with this character, but you couldn't really jump through a cat wall without being slowed, or fences, or a caustic gas without being damaged. Some legend pairing suggestions, actually Newcastle to dive in after you, or any other movement character like an Octane jump pad as we mentioned. A support legend as well to craft if you can't get away is going to be super helpful as well. I would say this legend is probably medium to use. He's not super easy, but not really hard unless you really want to master him and add some of these movement techniques on your side. That does, however, wrap up everything we have to talk about today, and I hope you learned a little bit more about who is Revenant, from his lore, his abilities, and how to capitalize on your own gameplay with them, implementing some of these techniques, or just simply deleting skin bags. Rev Reborn is totally worth the try, and let me know what you think of it. As always, I appreciate you so much for being here, supporting the video. Leave a like or share it with a Revenant main, and again, if I missed anything, let me know down below in the comments, or just simply say hi. But as always, thanks for being here, stay safe, stay gaming, and I'll see you in the next one. COMMsOut.